Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to preview, I think, one of the more confusing matchups in week one. I think we know Ole Miss should win this one, but how much and what kind of game it will be are mysteries. Blake, the Rebels open as 24-point favorites over Troy, which is having a coaching change. We'll get into the particulars of the offensive versus defensive matchups in a minute, but what are your opening thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I think, there's a reason why in other videos we've done, we've talked about schedules and team previews and those kind of things. And we talk about teams when they get to Ole Miss on their schedule. You don't really know what to expect because I think Ole Miss is one of those teams that I just don't have a great grasp of. And I think anyone out there who I'm sure others closer to the program probably have a better feel. But to me, on the outside looking in, I just feel like this is one of those teams that has a lot of questions going into the season. Not that it's questions of talent or anything like that. I think it's just what you have to replace, especially on the offensive side. The defense was still a work in progress last year. I feel like this year they'll continue to take steps in the right direction. But you do have more questions than you had a season ago, and I think that's understandable given the personnel changes and so many transfers coming in. I think that's the thing is you just talk about the number of transfers and guys who are not just transferring in, but guys who are transferring in and are going to be starting from day one and expected to be key contributors. That's why I think you got more questions with a team like Ole Miss. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they start the season. We've seen this go multiple ways before. Team that has a lot to replace, do they kind of get off to a sluggish start? Or does everything just kind of come together in the summer and off season and that chemistry's there with all these new guys in place and it just works out and you get off and rolling early. So we'll see.
Yeah, Ole Miss's biggest loss, of course, Matt Corral, who was one of the better players in the country a year ago. So Ole Miss has got to replace starting quarterback, top three running backs, top three receivers. Quarterback competition right now, Luke Altmaier and USC transfer Jackson Dart. Don't think they've named a starter as of when we're doing this. Altmaier didn't look great in the Sugar Bowl last year, to say the least, but a year of experience and practice that can change. Pretty good room for running backs. Zach Evans, Ulysses Bentley, both transfers out of the state of Texas, should have a pretty solid running back room. Jonathan Mingo's back. Again, I think Ole Miss hit the transfer market there. You've got some changes on staff, but what you do have is a pretty good offensive line. Nick Broker, one of the better offensive linemen in the conference, maybe the country. Troy, 9 returning starters on defense from a defense that was pretty good a year ago. Pretty good D line. Troy's been competitive a lot of years recently. Had a pretty good pass rush a year ago. Quality depth, linebacker in the secondary. Boy, just a lot of questions here for Ole Miss. This is not going to be just a walkover matchup if Troy is defensively, I think, what people expect.
Yeah, that's why this one's interesting because you do have a team that's replacing a lot on offense and has some questions. Even though it's Lane Kiffin and you just kind of, give him the benefit of the doubt, I think that he'll figure out the right pieces to put in there. But I mean, this is a team on Troy, top 25 nationally, yards per game allowed last year. So that's a top 25 defense a season ago, and you're adding a defensive coach as your head coach. So you feel like even though there may be some personnel changes, but like you said, there's a lot of starters returning. Maybe he's in a position which it's John Summer who was at Kentucky, who was the co-defense coordinator at
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky. So there's familiarity there as well with Ole Miss. So I think it's look, it's not the easiest start, I think, for Ole Miss for, just based on the offense versus defense elements of this. For a team that is going up against a defense that, yes, we understand they were in they're in the Sun Belt and they're not in the SEC, but this is a talented defense. And I think that again, you have someone who has familiarity as head coach and as a defensive minded coach with an Ole Miss because he was in the SEC, and now he's looking on the other side and saying they got a lot of talent over there, but how are they going to do this and how are they going to do that? Replacing Corral and replacing running backs, wide receivers, those guys. So I think it's very intriguing, and again, I'm not saying that Troy is going to pull off the upset or anything here, but I think if we're just breaking this down from a matchup standpoint, which is all we have to go on, this Ole Miss offense versus the Troy defense is kind of fascinating when you just look at it on paper. So
Well, the other side fascinating too, Blake. Troy has got 9 starters back, including a quarterback and Gunnar Watson, who has played or started 17 games. Now, they will change offenses, and so that's probably worth noting. Kamani Vidral has started 11 games at running back, ran for 727. 3 of the top 4 wideouts return. I think offensive line is a little bit of an issue, but I guess there's 4 starters who've started before for them. Defensively, Ole Miss loses Sam Williams, who was probably one of the 10 best defenders in the league a year ago. Chance Campbell, a starting linebacker, and I think Ole Miss's leading tackler, now with our favorite NFL team, the Titans. Uh, Transfers everywhere on that side of the ball, especially linebacker. Do they have enough DBs? That's been a question for Ole Miss in recent past. I don't know. This one, to me, hard to really size up on that side of the ball, too.
Yeah, it's a tough one, and I think it's the T word. It's transfers. Like I fully expect if they just have so many guys that Ole Miss does that they're gonna plug into these spots, and I think that just makes it so interesting here because all these guys are talented. It's just as we always know. I mean, when you're transferring to another program, it's not always an easy transition when you're learning new things and that kind of stuff. So I think it can take a little while, but seeing how everything comes together, I think that's why Ole Miss to me is one of the more intriguing teams in the SEC coming into the season, just because if all goes well, I mean they're a top 15 team. I think if everything comes together, it's just we don't know exactly how that's going to look, and especially in game one. And I think that's the maybe your hesitation right off the bat when you look at just kind of how this matchup breaks down. But yeah, this is a Troy team that, and well, I mean, 9 starters back on offense, 9 starters back on defense, and I think that's always something that it's nice to have, even for a team that feels like that they have not necessarily met expectations or want to be able to do that, get back to winning conference championships and those kind of things. So I think that will be something else. The Ole Miss defense this season will be a big theme. Again, they continue to make progress, and as you said, replacing someone that wreaked as much havoc as Williams, that's going to be something too that really will come into play here. So yeah, can they make enough plays in the secondary? I think they've got some depth there. It's just can they force turnovers? Can they make enough plays? This is another one that's kind of
Oh,
interesting when you look at it just from a matchup standpoint. Although I think Ole Miss's defense, the guys they're going to add to the mix, I think will be able to really help them continue to move in the right direction there.
okay, Blake, again, Ole Miss a 24-point favorite, 61-point over-under. That implies a final score 42 to 18-ish in favor of Ole Miss. I don't know, man. I believe in Ole Miss. I believe in Lane Kiffin, but it's an opener. And what you are in the
Yeah,
opener and what you are by season's end can be two different things. Troy is ranked in the preseason rankings that I'm seeing around 90 in the FCS by computers and humans. That seems maybe a little low given all the
yeah.
experience that they've got back, the fact the defense was good. I don't know, 24 points and a 61-point over under might be a lot in week one. We are not professional bettors. We just watch a lot of football and pay attention and give our opinions. I'm not. I don't know that I would touch this game. If I did, Ole Miss covering 24 and that over under both make me nervous.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking at this and you're trying to be optimistic for Ole Miss, look, this is a Troy team that has a lot back. It's still a team that went 5-7 last year. With a lot of those pieces back. But you expect more experience. You got a new head coach, defensive minded coach, which I think that's something that helps you in week one, when you're trying to do this, go up against if you're trying to prepare for Lane Kiffin, right? At least you got an entire offseason to do it. You've got some familiarity there. So I'm with you. I would stay far away from this game. I would want no part of it. I would because of that, I would probably be like, all right, I go Troy plus 24 here. Although I still expect Ole Miss to win. I still expect there to be some things that we're probably looking at and just not expecting from Ole Miss right off the bat. That like, okay, they're going to come out and do this and do that. But I would want no part of this. I think this is a game that I'm not saying I think Troy's going to win or anything, but Ole Miss is one of the teams in the SEC that has more questions coming into the season, and I just think that makes it really hard to predict a game like this for week one. So,
All right, we're picking all the SEC Week 1 games. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. We'll be back with plenty more of these as the opening of college football approaches.